Hey everyone, it's Bobby from Lyco Birds with another Bird ID Through the Year video, and my previous video was an introduction to woodpeckers, and I promised that I would cover Downy woodpecker versus hairy woodpecker specifically to help with that confusion pair, so that is this video. The first thing to know about these two is they are quite different sizes. Hairy woodpecker here on the right is quite a bit larger than Downy woodpecker when you directly compare them, but remember that size is often very difficult to judge in the field, so an isolated bird, you may not really be able to tell the exact size to identify it just when it's alone on a tree. One of the most helpful features for identifying these two is the size of the bill. So Downy woodpecker has a smaller bill, and the bill, if you picture turning the bill around, the bill is much shorter than the head. You can see it only really would project back midway into the head. Whereas for hairy woodpecker, it has a larger bill that is more similar to the size of the other woodpeckers. And if you picture that going back through the head, you can see it makes it most of the way. And I did briefly touch on it in my last video, but just so I say it again in this video, males have red on the back of the head for both species, and females do not have any red in the same location. And actually, the juvenile males, instead of having red towards the back here, they don't have any red there. It's like a female, but it does have red towards the top of the head here. So just something to keep in mind. One of the other features that can be pretty helpful in a lot of circumstances is the pattern on the tail. So the outer tail feathers on downy woodpeckers usually have some sort of dark barring or spotting, which you can see here in these white outer tail feathers. Whereas hairy woodpeckers generally have clean white outer tail feathers, or sometimes you'll see some staining. It can be yellowish or orange, but by and large, that is going to help you 99% of the time. But there is the rare case of downy woodpeckers that don't actually have any dark markings in the tail. That's very rare. I've barely seen any like that. But you can see this example. This is very clearly a downy woodpecker. You can see the short bill here, but the tail definitely does not have any dark at all, and that's pretty clear in the underside shot here and definitely in the spread tail in the flight shot. So that's just something to keep in mind. If you see the clean white tail, usually that means hairy woodpecker, but not always. And in flight, you are looking largely for those same features I just mentioned. You can see on this hairy woodpecker, you've got definitely a fairly long bill and clean white outer tail feathers, whereas on this downy woodpecker, you have this nice short bill and definitely have some dark markings here in the outer tail feathers. And when they are flying, a lot of times they'll be calling too, especially hairy woodpecker. I'll usually hear them calling when they're flying, and I don't really want to go into the nuances of vocalization too early in this series. Maybe we'll get to that later or maybe in year 2, but it might be worth familiarizing yourself with the calls of these two species if you think that will help you. One other thing I did want to mention, because you'll often hear it referenced as a field mark, is the presence of a shoulder notch. So hairy woodpeckers often show a prominent notch in the shoulder area. And what do I mean by that? So watch on this hairy woodpecker where the border between the light and dark is. And again on this one, where you definitely have kind of this uneven notch where the black comes out and the white goes in, as opposed to these downy woodpeckers where it's just kind of more of a smooth shoulder. But that is a pretty tricky field mark to apply. Depending on the angle, depending on the posture, it can kind of mess with how you're seeing that. So really, I would not recommend relying on that. It's just something to be aware of. And that should be a pretty good introduction to Downy Woodpecker versus Hairy Woodpecker. And if you'd like to sign up for daily bird ID quiz emails, please go to likeobirds.com/email and you can sign up there. It's free, it's easy to unsubscribe, and pretty much everything we publish goes into that email, so you'll never miss anything that Lyco Birds publishes. And if you're enjoying this Bird ID Through the Year series, please consider subscribing, and I will see you next time.